The year was 2847, and humanity had spread across 12 star systems. It was not much compared to the ancient empires that ruled the galaxy. The Dominion controlled over 2,000 worlds, and they looked at humans the way a giant looks at an ant. They saw Earth and its colonies as nothing more than space that belonged to them, space that humans were borrowing until they decided to take it back. Captain Daniel Marsh stood on the bridge of the TSS and watched the stars through the main viewport. He was a tall man with eyes and a calm face that never showed fear, even when fear was the only reasonable response. The ship beneath his feet was unlike anything humanity had ever built. It was the first of the Hurricane-class battleships, and it represented 30 years of secret work by the minds on Earth. The Hurricane program began after the humiliation at. Daniel remembered that day even though he had been just a young officer at the time. They had come with 50 warships and demanded that Earth pay tribute or face destruction. The Terran fleet had tried to fight back, but their weapons barely scratched the enemy's shields. 3,000 humans died that day, and Earth was forced to sign a treaty that made them look weak in the eyes of the entire galaxy. But humans never forgot. They smiled and paid the tribute while secretly building something that would change everything. Commander Laura walked onto the bridge with a tablet in her hand. She was the executive officer of the, and Daniel trusted her more than anyone else in the fleet. Her dark hair was tied back in a practical style, and her brown eyes were sharp with intelligence. "Captain," she said, "we have new intelligence from Terran Command. They are moving ships near New Virginia." Daniel turned to face her. "How many ships?" Laura checked her tablet. "Current count is 42 warships, including 3 dreadnoughts." That was not a patrol. That was an invasion force. New Virginia was home to 12 million human colonists, farmers and miners and families who had built a new life on a world far from Earth. They had no defenses that could stop even a single cruiser. "What are our orders?" Daniel asked. "Admiral Cole wants us to observe and report. We are not to engage under any circumstances." Daniel nodded, but his jaw tightened. Cole was a good admiral, but she was also careful, perhaps too careful. The old fleet could not fight but there was not the old fleet. Lieutenant Price sat at the tactical station running numbers on his console. He was young with hair and a face that still looked like it belonged in a classroom rather than on a warship. But his mind worked faster than anyone Daniel had ever met, and his instincts for battle were remarkable. "Sir," said without looking up, "these fleet movements do not match standard patrol patterns. They are positioning for orbital bombardment." Daniel walked over to the tactical station and looked at the display. Was right. The ships were spreading into a formation that would let them target multiple population centers at once. This was not intimidation. This was preparation for mass murder. "How long until they reach firing position?" Daniel asked. 14 hours, replied. "Maybe less if they push their engines." Daniel looked around the bridge at his crew. These men and women had trained for years. They had run simulations and drilled until every action was automatic. But none of them had ever seen real combat against a superior enemy. None of them knew if they could actually do what the engineers promised it could do. Chief Engineer called from the engineering station. His voice was rough from years of breathing recycled air on dozens of ships. He was an older man with hair and hands that had been burned, and from countless repairs made under fire. "Captain, the ship is ready. All systems are operating at peak efficiency. Whatever you decide to do, they will not let you down." Dr. Hudson stepped forward from the science station. She was a specialist in alien cultures and psychology. Her job was to help the crew understand how their enemies thought and what they might do next. She had spent 15 years studying the. "Captain," she said quietly, "I have analyzed every record of military operations. They have never attacked a colony of this size without intending to destroy it completely. If those ships reach New Virginia, there will be no survivors." The bridge fell silent. Everyone understood what she was saying. 12 million people were about to die, and the only ship that could possibly stop it was the one they were standing on. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. His orders were clear. Observe and report. Do not engage. Those orders came from an admiral who did not know what they could do. An admiral who still thought of humans as the weaker species that had to hide and wait. But Daniel had read the classified reports. He had seen the weapon tests. He knew that the ship beneath his feet carried enough firepower to break a fleet. The question was simple. Did he follow his orders and watch 12 million people die? Or did he do what he joined the Navy to do? He opened his eyes. Helm set a course to intercept the fleet. Maximum speed. Laura looked at him with surprise, but also with something that might have been relief. Sir, our orders say to observe only. Daniel met her eyes. I am aware of our orders, Commander. I am also aware that we are the only ship that can reach New Virginia in time. When we joined the Terran Navy, we swore to protect human lives. That oath did not come with exceptions. He turned to face the main viewport as the stars began to stretch into lines. The jump to faster than light speed, and the bridge hummed with power. Daniel said calmly, "Begin loading all weapons. I want every system ready to fire the moment we arrive." Nodded, and his fingers flew across the console. Quantum cascade cannons charging. Graviton torpedoes loaded. Point defense grid active. Laura stepped closer to Daniel and spoke quietly so only he could hear. "If this does not work, we will be starting a war we cannot win." Daniel watched the blur of faster-than-light travel through the viewport. "If we do nothing," he replied, "we will be proving that human lives do not matter. I will not send that message to the galaxy." The race through the void toward a battle that would change everything. 42 warships waited at New Virginia. They expected no resistance. They expected easy prey. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The dropped out of faster-than-light traveled directly in the path of the Armada. The stars snapped back into points of light, and the main viewport filled with the sight of enemy warships. 42 vessels hung in space between the and the blue-green world of New Virginia. Daniel stood at the center of the bridge with his hands clasped behind his back. He showed no fear, even though his heart was beating faster than it had in years. This was the moment that everything had been building toward. 30 years of secret research. Thousands of engineers working in hidden facilities. Trillions of credits spent on weapons that the galaxy had never seen. Now it was time to find out if any of it worked. The communications console beeped and Ensign Brooks looked up from his station. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the flagship. They are demanding that we identify ourselves." Was the youngest officer on the bridge. He had graduated from the academy only 6 months ago, and this was his first assignment. His hands trembled slightly as he worked the controls, but his voice remained steady. "Put it on the main screen," Daniel ordered. The viewport flickered, and the face of a commander appeared. He was a reptilian creature with dark green scales and yellow eyes that burned with contempt. His uniform was decorated with medals and symbols that marked him as a high-ranking officer. This was Supreme Warlord, commander of the invasion fleet. Human vessel hissed, "You have entered restricted space. Identify yourself and surrender immediately. If you comply, your crew will be allowed to live as slaves. If you resist, you will be destroyed." Daniel stepped forward so the camera could capture his face clearly. "This is Captain Daniel Marsh of the Terran Navy vessel. You are in orbit around a human colony world with weapons charged. I am ordering you to withdraw your fleet immediately." Stared at the screen for a long moment. Then he began to laugh. It was an ugly sound like rocks grinding together. "One ship," he said with amusement. "The humans send one ship to face the might of the Dominion. Your species is even more foolish than we believed." Daniel did not smile. He did not react at all. "One ship is all we need." Stopped laughing. His yellow eyes narrowed with anger. You dare threaten us? We have conquered 1,000 worlds. We have destroyed civilizations older than your entire species. You are nothing." Daniel glanced at who nodded to confirm that all weapons were ready. Then he looked back at the screen. "I am going to give you one chance," he said calmly. "Turn your fleet around and leave this system. If you refuse, I will destroy every ship under your command." Slammed his clawed hand against his command chair. "Enough of this arrogance. All ships, open fire on the human vessel. Reduce them to atoms." The transmission ended, and the viewport showed the fleet moving into attack formation. Energy beams began to charge on the bows of the enemy dreadnoughts. Missiles launched from cruisers and destroyers. The entire fleet focused its firepower on the single Terran ship. "Incoming fire announced. Impact in 20 seconds." Daniel did not move. He waited as the missiles and energy beams crossed the distance between the fleets. Laura gripped the armrest of her chair, held his breath, watched his engineering readouts with intense focus. 10 seconds said, 5 seconds. The weapons struck. The explosions bloomed across the ship's hull. Energy beams slammed into its shields with enough force to vaporize a normal cruiser. The did not even shake. Looked up from her console with wonder in her eyes. "The adaptive armor is working. It analyzed their weapon frequencies and adjusted our shields in real time. They cannot hurt us." Daniel allowed himself a small smile. "Now it is our turn. Fire at will." Pressed a single button, and the galaxy changed forever. The quantum cascade cannons discharged for the first time in actual combat. They did not fire energy beams or projectiles. They fired something that they had never encountered. The weapons created a cascade effect that passed through shields as if they did not exist. The first dreadnought, the largest ship in the fleet, simply came apart. One moment it was there. The next moment it was an expanding cloud of debris. Watched from his flagship as 3 of his cruisers followed the dreadnought into oblivion. He could not understand what he was seeing. His ships were supposed to be invincible. Human weapons were supposed to be primitive. This was not possible. "Fire the graviton torpedoes," Daniel ordered. Launched a spread of torpedoes at the enemy formation. These weapons created localized gravity wells that crushed anything caught in their field. 2 more cruisers collapsed in on themselves, compressed into spheres no larger than a man's fist. The fleet broke formation. Ships that had been advancing with confidence now turned and ran. Captains who had expected an easy victory now screamed orders to retreat. Discipline vanished as survival instinct took over. Tried to rally his forces, but no one was listening. His communications officer reported that 7 more ships had been destroyed in the last 30 seconds. His tactical officer said that their weapons were having no effect on the human vessel. His entire worldview was crashing down around him. The moved through the formation like a predator among prey, targeted engines and weapon systems with precision that should have been impossible. The quantum cascade cannons fired again and again. Each shot found its mark. Each shot ended a ship. Laura watched the destruction with a mixture of awe and horror. She had known that was powerful, but she had not truly understood what that meant until now. Daniel kept his eyes on the tactical display. He was not enjoying this. There was no pleasure in his expression. He was doing what had to be done to save 12 million lives. 15 minutes after the battle began, it was over. The tactical display showed the results. 23 warships destroyed. 17 more crippled and drifting. The survivors were fleeing at maximum speed, their engines burning hot as they tried to escape the nightmare they had stumbled into. They had taken no damage. Its crew had suffered no casualties. Looked at his console with disbelief. "Sir, we are receiving communications from the planet's surface. The colonists are asking what happened." Daniel walked to the viewport and looked at New Virginia. The planet turned slowly below them, blue oceans and green continents visible through wisps of white cloud. 12 million people were down there. 12 million people who would have died if they had not come. Tell them they are safe, Daniel said quietly. Tell them to go home to their families. Laura stood beside him. The galaxy is going to hear about this, she said. Everything changes now. Daniel nodded. They had ruled through fear for thousands of years. They had bullied and conquered and destroyed because no one could stop them. Today they learned that someone could. Let them hear, Daniel said. Let everyone hear. Humanity is done being afraid. The news spread across the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. Communication relays carried the story from system to system. Trading vessels brought recordings of the battle to every port and station. Within 3 days, every intelligent species in known space had heard what happened at New Virginia. One human ship had destroyed an invasion fleet. Sat at his communications console and listened to the chaos. Transmissions flooded in from every direction. Some came from news organizations demanding interviews. Some came from Terran command asking for reports. Some came from species that humanity had never contacted before. Captain said with amazement in his voice, I am receiving messages from at least 30 different alien governments. They all want to know about us. They want to know about the ship. Daniel stood at the center of the bridge reviewing the latest intelligence reports. The Dominion had gone silent in the hours after the battle. Their communication channels were encrypted and their ships had pulled back from every border. They were planning something. What are they saying? Daniel asked. Scrolled through the messages. Some are afraid. They think we might attack them next, but others are sending messages of support. Species I have never heard of are saying that this is the first good news they have received in centuries. Looked up from her science station. That makes sense, she said. They have oppressed dozens of species across the galaxy. They take resources and labor and give nothing back. Many civilizations have dreamed of standing up to them, but none had the power to do so. Until now. Laura walked onto the bridge with a tablet in her hand. She had dark circles under her eyes from lack of sleep. The entire crew had been working around the clock since the battle. We have received orders from Admiral Cole, she announced. We are to proceed to the Galactic Concord Station immediately. They have demanded an emergency session. They are calling for sanctions against Earth. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Sanctions. They tried to murder 12 million colonists and they want to sanction us. Laura nodded grimly. They are claiming that we attacked without provocation. They say the fleet was on a peaceful training exercise and we opened fire for no reason. The bridge crew exchanged looks of disbelief. Let out a harsh laugh from the engineering station. Peaceful training exercise, he repeated, with weapons charged and pointed at population centers. Do they think the galaxy is stupid? They think the galaxy is afraid, said quietly. They have always been able to control the narrative because no one dared to challenge them. They expect the same thing to happen now. Daniel thought for a moment. Then he made a decision. We will go to the Concord Station, but we will not go alone. Laura, send a message to Admiral Cole. Request that she join us there. I want the highest-ranking Terran officer standing beside me when we face these accusations. They changed course and made the jump to faster than light travel. The Galactic Concord Station was located in a neutral system that belonged to no single power. It was where the great empires met to negotiate treaties and settle disputes. Humanity had never been allowed inside. 2 days later, they arrived at the station. It was an enormous structure, a ring of metal and glass that orbited a small yellow star. Hundreds of ships surrounded it. Vessels from every major power in the galaxy had come to witness this moment. Daniel looked at the gathering through the viewport. He had never seen so many different ship designs in one place. Dreadnoughts with their curved hulls, hive ships that looked like twisted organic growths, energy vessels that glowed with an inner light, and countless others that he could not identify. Admiral Cole arrived on a diplomatic shuttle and came aboard the. She was an older woman with silver hair and a face that showed every year of her long career. Her uniform was decorated with medals from a dozen campaigns. She had fought the AT and carried the scars of that defeat. "Captain Marsh," she said as she stepped onto the bridge, "you disobeyed direct orders. You engaged an enemy fleet without authorization. You started an incident that could lead to the destruction of our entire species." Daniel stood at attention. "Yes, Admiral, I did." Stared at him for a long moment. Then a small smile crossed her face. "And you saved 12 million lives in the process. Well done, Captain." The tension on the bridge dissolved. Daniel let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. Moved to stand beside him at the viewport. "The conquered will not be friendly to us," she warned. "They have many allies and they have been working to turn opinion against humanity. We need to present our case carefully." "We have the evidence," Daniel said. "Sensor logs showing their ships in bombardment formation. Communications intercepts proving they intended to attack civilians." "Evidence matters less than power," in the Conquered replied. "But that is why I brought the. Let them see the ship that broke their fleet. Let them wonder what else we might be capable of." The Terran delegation entered the Conquered station with Daniel and at the head. The interior was vast and filled with representatives from 100 different species. They walked through corridors designed for beings of every size and shape. Gravity fields shifted beneath their feet to accommodate different biological needs. The main chamber was a circular room with seats arranged around a central platform. The ambassador stood waiting for them. His name was, and he was a tall reptilian with dark red scales and eyes that burned with hatred. Began his accusation immediately. "The humans have committed an act of unprovoked aggression against the Dominion. They destroyed our ships without warning. They murdered thousands of our warriors. They must be punished." Daniel stepped forward to respond. He felt the eyes of the galaxy upon him. Species that had never seen a human in person stared at him with curiosity and fear. He told the truth. He showed the evidence. He explained that the fleet had been positioned to bombard civilian population centers. He displayed the communication intercepts that proved they intended to kill every human on New Virginia. The chamber fell silent as he spoke. The smaller species, those who had suffered under oppression for centuries, listened with particular attention. They looked at Daniel not with fear but with something that might have been hope. When the vote came, it was not even close. The Galactic Conquered refused to sanction Earth. For the first time in recorded history, that had been what they demanded. Stormed out of the chamber with rage in his eyes. He passed Daniel on his way out and stopped to hiss a warning. "This is not over, human. You have made an enemy of the most powerful empire in the galaxy. We will destroy your species for this insult." Daniel met his gaze without flinching. "You are welcome to try." The ambassador left and the chamber erupted in murmurs. Something had changed. Everyone could feel it. The old order that had ruled the galaxy was beginning to crack. Stood beside Daniel as they watched the chaos unfold. "You have made us very dangerous enemies today," she said. Daniel nodded. "And we may have made some friends as well. Look at the smaller delegations. They are watching us. They are wondering if there might be another way." The galaxy had learned that humanity would not be pushed around. Now everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. Deep within the heart of space, Supreme Commander stood before the War Council of the Dominion. He was the highest military authority in the Empire, a massive reptilian warrior covered in scars from 100 battles. His yellow eyes burned with a cold fury that made even his own officers afraid. "The humans have humiliated us," growled. "They have made us look weak before the entire galaxy. This cannot stand. This will not stand." The council chamber was filled with the most powerful leaders of the Dominion, admirals and generals who commanded millions of soldiers, politicians who ruled over thousands of worlds. They had gathered to decide the fate of humanity. One ship continued. "They defeated our fleet with one ship. But even the humans cannot have many vessels of that class. Their industrial capacity is limited. Their technology is stolen, not developed. We will overwhelm them with numbers they cannot match. He activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy. Territory glowed red across vast sections of space. Human territory was a small cluster of blue dots that seemed insignificant by comparison. "I am assembling the largest fleet in our history," announced. 800 warships will gather at the border. But that is not all. I have reached out to others who share our desire to see humanity destroyed. The display shifted to show two new territories. One glowed green, the other pulsed with strange energy patterns. "The collective has agreed to join us," said. "Their hive ships will add 500 vessels to our armada, and the Union has pledged another 700 ships." Murmurs filled the council chamber. There were species that shared a single consciousness across billions of individual bodies. They viewed all other life forms as either food or obstacles. There were ancient energy beings who believed that biological creatures were inferior and should be eliminated. Together said with satisfaction, "We will command 2,000 warships. We will not just defeat the humans, we will erase them from existence. Every colony, every outpost, every last member of their species will be destroyed." The council erupted in approval. The shame of New Virginia would be avenged. The natural order of the galaxy would be restored. On Earth, Admiral Cole stood before the Terran Strategic Command and delivered the worst news in human history. "Our intelligence networks have confirmed the coalition forming against us," she said. And have combined their fleets. They are planning a direct assault on the Sol system." The room fell silent. The officers present had fought in many battles, but none of them had faced anything like this. "How many ships?" one admiral asked. Took a breath. "Over 2,000. They outnumber our entire fleet by a factor of 10. Daniel stood at the back of the room, listening. He had been summoned to Earth after the events at the Concord. There was undergoing repairs and upgrades at the orbital shipyard. It was the only Hurricane-class vessel currently operational. Continued. 3 additional Hurricane-class battleships are under construction: the TSS Tempest, TSS Thunder, and TSS Typhoon, but they will not be ready for at least 4 months. The Coalition fleet will arrive in 6 weeks. "What about allies?" another officer asked. "Other species who might stand with us?" "We have received offers of support from several smaller powers," replied. "But their combined forces would add perhaps 100 ships to our own. It is not enough." Daniel stepped forward. "Admiral, what are the coalition's stated goals?" Looked at him with grim eyes. "Complete extinction, Captain. Their communications make it clear. They intend to destroy every human world. They will not accept surrender. They will not take prisoners. This is not a war for territory. This is a war of annihilation." The weight of those words settled over the room. Every person there understood what was at stake. Not just their own lives, but the lives of every human being in existence. Was working day and night on the. He had not slept in 3 days, but he refused to stop. Every hour brought new modifications and improvements to the ship systems. Sat with him in the engineering bay, running calculations on her tablet. "I have been studying thee," and she said. "Their tactics are different from the attack in swarms, overwhelming defenses with sheer numbers. The use energy weapons that bypass conventional shields." Nodded. "I am developing new countermeasures. The adaptive armor can be modified to handle multiple threat profiles simultaneously, but it will take time." "Time is the one thing we do not have," replied. On the bridge of the, Daniel received an unexpected communication. It came through encrypted channels that should have been impossible to access. The caller was a female named. There were a species that had been conquered by the over 800 years ago. They served as slaves and laborers throughout the Dominion, but they had never stopped dreaming of freedom. Captain Marsh said. Her image flickered on the screen. She was a slender being with silver skin and large dark eyes. I am taking a great risk by contacting you. If they discover this communication, my entire family will be executed. Daniel leaned forward. Why are you contacting us? Because you did something no one else has done in 1,000 years, replied. You stood up to them and won. They have been waiting for this moment. We have been gathering information for generations, hoping that someday there would be someone to give it to. She transmitted a data package that contained detailed information about the Coalition fleet, ship positions, weapon capabilities, command structures, and tactical weaknesses. It was intelligence that would take years to gather through normal means. Why are you helping us? Daniel asked. Smiled sadly. Because if humanity falls, our hope dies with you. But if you win, then perhaps one day they will be free. Over the following days, more species reached out to humanity. A peaceful race that they had stripped of whose population had been reduced to a fraction of its original numbers by raids. Who had lived in hiding for centuries to avoid purges. One by one, they offered what they could. Some provided intelligence. Some provided supplies. A few even sent ships to join the defense of Earth. Reviewed the growing list of allies with surprise. I did not expect this, she admitted. Daniel looked at the names scrolling across his screen. Neither did I, but it makes sense. They and their partners have terrorized the galaxy for so long that everyone lives in fear. We showed that fear can be overcome. Now others are finding their courage. Laura entered the room with news. Admiral, the construction crews are pushing themselves beyond all limits. The 3 new Hurricane-class ships might be ready 2 weeks ahead of schedule. That would still be too late, said. Daniel shook his head. Maybe not. If we can slow the Coalition down by even a little time, those ships could make the difference. The pieces were falling into place. Humanity was still outnumbered. Still facing an enemy that wanted to wipe them from existence. But they were not alone anymore. And sometimes that made all the difference. The Coalition fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system on a cold morning in December. 2,000 warships emerged from faster-than-light travel in a formation that stretched across millions of kilometers. Dreadnoughts took the center. Hive ships clustered in swarms around the flanks. Energy vessels glowed with deadly light at the rear. Supreme Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the distant blue dot that was Earth. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The moment when humanity would pay for their arrogance. All ships advance, he commanded. Today we end the human threat forever. But as the Coalition fleet moved forward, noticed something unexpected. The space before them was not empty. Ships were gathering in a defensive formation around Earth, not just human ships. What is this? Demanded. His tactical officer checked the sensors. Sir, we are detecting vessels from 17 different species. Cruisers, frigates, destroyers. They have formed a combined fleet with the humans. Snarled with contempt, a collection of slaves and vermin. They will die alongside their human friends. At the center of the Allied formation, Captain Daniel Marsh stood on the bridge of the ship hummed with power as pushed the engines to their limits. Every system was optimized for combat. Every weapon was loaded and ready. Admiral Cole commanded the entire defense from the TSS Resolute, an older battleship that served as the fleet flagship. Her voice came through the communication system, calm and steady. All ships, this is Admiral Cole. The enemy outnumbers us, but we are not fighting for territory or resources. We are fighting for our right to exist. Today, we show the galaxy what happens when free peoples stand together. May fortune favor us all. The Coalition fleet closed the distance, watched with growing irritation as the Allied ships refused to break formation. They should have been fleeing. They should have been begging for mercy. Instead, they held their ground. The battle began. Energy beams lanced across space. Missiles launched in clouds of hundreds. Weapons discharged pulses of pure destructive force. The firepower directed at the Allied fleet was beyond anything the galaxy had witnessed in 1,000 years. The move to the front of the formation. Daniel gave the order and fired the quantum cascade cannons. 3 cruisers disintegrated in the opening seconds. Laura coordinated the Allied ships, directing them to exploit the gaps that they created. Gunships darted through enemy lines, striking at exposed flanks. Vessels provided covering fire. They attacked with a fury born of generations of suffering. Maintained communications with dozens of Allied captains. Some spoke languages that the translation software could barely handle. Some had never worked with humans before, but they fought together as if they had been allies for years. Analyzed enemy movements and predicted their tactics. The swarms follow predictable patterns, she reported. If we eliminate their coordination nodes, the individual ships will lose direction. Adjusted his targeting and fired at the massive hive ships that controlled the swarms. Each one that fell through thousands of smaller ships into chaos. The battle raged for hours. Ships died on both sides. The Allied fleet was taking heavy losses. Frigates sacrificed themselves to protect human carriers. Cruisers fought until their weapons ran dry and then rammed enemy vessels. But the coalition was taking heavier losses. There was everywhere at once, breaking through formations, destroying capital ships, creating openings for the Allied fleet to exploit. Watched his numerical advantage shrink with each passing minute. Still the coalition pressed forward. They were so close to Earth now that they could see the lights of cities on the night side, so close to victory. Then the impossible happened. 3 new contacts appeared on every sensor screen. Ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly behind the Allied fleet. Daniel looked at the identification signals and felt his heart surge. TSS Tempest, TSS Thunder, TSS Typhoon. Laughed from the engineering station. The construction crews did it. They finished ahead of schedule. Those beautiful people finished ahead of schedule. 4 Hurricane-class battleships now faced the coalition fleet. The newcomers immediately engaged, their weapons systems firing with devastating effect. Energy vessels, which had been advancing with confidence, suddenly found themselves under attack from weapons they could not counter. Stared at his tactical display with disbelief. This was not possible. The humans should not have been able to build so many ships so quickly. Their technology should not have been this advanced. All ships concentrate fire on the Hurricane vessels, he ordered desperately. But it was too late. The 4 battleships coordinated their attacks with lethal precision. They worked together in patterns that seemed almost choreographed. Each ship covered the others. Each strike was calculated to cause maximum damage. The swarms broke first. Without their hive ships to guide them, the smaller vessels scattered in all directions. Some fled. Some crashed into each other in confusion. The followed. Their ancient confidence shattered as ship after ship fell to weapons they could not understand. They retreated toward the edge of the system, abandoning their allies. Found himself alone with what remained of the fleet. Less than 300 ships out of the 800 he had brought. He looked at Earth spinning peacefully below, so close and yet forever out of reach. The 4 Hurricane battleships converged on his flagship. Daniel opened a communication channel. Supreme Commander, Daniel said, "Your fleet is broken, your allies have fled. You can surrender now and save what remains of your forces, or you can die here. The choice is yours." His yellow eyes burned with hate. Do not surrender to lesser species. He ordered his weapons to fire. The flagship launched everything it had at the. Daniel shook his head sadly. Then you have made your choice. All 4 Hurricane vessels fired simultaneously. His flagship crumpled under the concentrated assault. It broke apart in silence, scattering debris across the void. The remaining ships fled. The Battle of Saul was over. In the aftermath, the galaxy changed. The Galactic Concord met and voted to admit humanity as a full member. The Dominion, weakened and humiliated, was forced to release dozens of subjugated species. The declared independence for the first time in 800 years. The Free Species Alliance was born that day. Humanity, and a dozen other peoples joined together in a pact of mutual defense and cooperation. Never again would the strong prey upon the weak without consequence. Daniel stood on the bridge of the as Earth turned slowly below. Laura joined him at the viewport. "We did it," she said quietly. "We actually did it." Daniel nodded. "Not just us. Everyone who stood with us. Everyone who refused to accept that the galaxy had to be ruled by fear." Somewhere on a distant world, a young child looked up at the night sky. Strange lights moved among the stars, lights that had not been there before. "What are those?" she asked her parent. Her parents smiled with tears in their eyes. "Those are human ships. They came to help us. They came to make sure no one hurts us again." The galaxy had learned its lesson the hard way. Humanity did not start fights. They did not seek conquest or domination. They simply wanted to live in peace with their neighbors. But when someone threatened the innocent, when someone tried to destroy the helpless, humanity stood up. They fought back with everything they had. And they won.